Good evening, dear listeners. This is Farida Nabourema broadcasting from the studio of Stereo Radio. Thank you very much for joining us in Countdown. We are very sorry that we are starting 5 minutes late today. We hope you are enjoying your Thanksgiving week, and we give thanks to our special guests today who are coming from the Gambia, Mr. Ousainou Mbenga and Mr. Pasamba Jow. Both are leaders of DUGA. Thank you for coming in today, Mr. Pasamba Jow and Mr. Ousainou Mbenga.
Thank you so very much for having us, Farida.
You are very welcome. I am excited.
Thank you, Farida.
You're welcome. I'm very excited to discuss the politics of your country with you today. But before we get started, please allow me to give our listeners some historic information regarding your country, history, and general geographical descriptions. So the Gambia is a West African country surrounded by Senegal. It is geographically the smallest country, the smallest mainland country in Africa. The Gambia has a population of 1.7 million people, and its area is 11,295 square kilometers. It used to be a former British colony. It obtained its independence on February 18th, 1965, and joined the Commonwealth, from which it withdrew in 2013. The main religion in Gambia is Islam. So following its independence, the Gambia conducted freely contested elections every 5 years. Each election was won by the People's Progressive Party, headed by Dawda Jawara. In 1994, following corruption allegations against the Jawara regime and widespread discontent in the army, a largely bloodless and successful coup d'etat installed Army Lieutenant Yahya Jammeh into power. Politicians from disposed President Jawara's People's Progressive Party and other senior government officials were banned from participating in politics until July 2001. The Gambia followed the formal policy of non-alignment, foreign policy-wise, and it maintained close relationships with the United Kingdom, Senegal, and other African countries. The July 1994 coup strained the Gambians' relationship with Western powers, particularly the United States, which until 2002 suspended most non-humanitarian assistance in accordance with Section 508 of the Foreign Assistance Act. Since 1995, President Jammeh has established diplomatic relations with several additional countries, including Libya till 2010, Republic of China, Taiwan, terminated in November 2013, and Cuba. The People's Republic of China cut ties with the Gambia in 1995 after later established diplomatic links with Taiwan. Economic-wise, agriculture accounts for roughly 30% of gross domestic product and employs about 70% of labor force within the country. So we are here today with the leaders of the Democratic Union of Gambian Activists, as I said. And the Democratic Union of Gambian Activists is an umbrella movement to unite Gambians around the world, aimed at ending tyranny in all its forms, ushering in a new democratic Gambia that shall guarantee the people peace, progress, prosperity, and liberty. And also, it is trying to guarantee people the unhindered rights to determine their manner of government through a transparent, democratic electoral process. So, Mr. Mbenga and Mr. Jow, I hope I have been accurate about the description of your country. And if you have anything to add in regards to that, I'm going to allow you to add it at this point. And I will start with you, Mr. Mbenga.
Farida, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
First of all, I just wanted to express, our gratitude and for having us, because you could have just, stuck with issues affecting Togo, and but you did your research and found out about us, and we are really pleased that we are beginning to discover each other, and stop fighting in isolation. So we were very touched that, you know, you were interested in what is happening in the Gambia. And for that matter, you know, we are very, very, very grateful of this. You know, the more we stop fighting in isolation and understand that what affects Togo should be my concern. I should be concerned about what affects Gambia or Congo, Sierra Leone, or wherever in African people are found. It should be our collective concern.
Absolutely.
So we are very, very glad. We are very, very grateful for this.
Thank you, Mr. Mbenga.
Okay, yeah.
Yes,
one
please go
point
ahead.
that I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, when you were in your opening remarks, there has been a very deliberate misinformation by the AFDRC that the coup was a bloodless coup. It wasn't, as it is made to be understood. You know, there was some, you know, bloodshed among the soldiers. You know, and later on, you know, it has become more mad than ever before. But you know, that was a false statement that, you know, like it was a bloodless coup. You know, like some people died, not massively though.
Okay. Thank you for correcting that. And I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you. Mr. Jow, do you have anything to add at this point to the description of the Gambia? Because I have some issues with some other interviewees who are not very satisfied with my description of the country. So maybe you might have something to complete at this point to add to it, because as a non-Gambian citizen, I don't think I know as much about your country as you do.
No, you know, I really have no objections or no complaints. I think you did a very, very good job, but just would also want to thank you, because this is a very interesting discussion, because we are discussing with a former, an activist in yourself, because I was sitting here reading, following your Facebook page, and then also listening to some of your statements and your interviews on YouTube. And, you know, you are doing a great job, and Africa needs people like you and women. And I was very happy hearing about the level of participation of women in Togo in trying to liberate their country. And I think it's also because we have very, very strong Gambian women, and it's very encouraging, because we believe that wherever the women take the lead in anything, success follows. So thank you so very much, Farida, for having us.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you did some digging and research about me and my country. I hope you feel safer now. However, I'm very appreciative about this. But this interview is about you, and I would like to give all the time for you to expose your organization and work. The work that you've been doing to promote democracy, human rights, and freedom in the Gambia. So from this, I will just start with my first question, and I think I will give it to Mr. Mbenga. Mr. Mbenga, I have this question. You are a human rights activist, and you have created your organization, I believe, last year in order to fight for the betterment of human rights in your country. However, the president of the Gambia, President Yahya Jammeh, actually, I don't think I should be calling him President Yahya Jammeh, because his official title, I believe, is His Excellency Cheikh Professor Alhaji Dr. Yahya Abdulaziz Jamus Jonkung Jammeh Nasiruddin. I'm still breathing, and I hope I will be able to breathe normally after I've called him over and over like this during this interview. So, sir, the president of your country has declared that in his country there is no security guarantee for human rights activists, and in this statement, we are not going to condone people posing as human rights defenders to the detriment of the country. If you are affiliated with any human rights group, be rest assured that your security and personal safety will not be guaranteed by my government. we are ready to kill saboteurs. So, Mr. Mbenga, as a human rights activist, your president has said that you are not welcome in his country and he's ready to kill whoever calls himself or pose as a human rights activist. So, will you at this point ever be able to return to your country as long as Mr. President is still in power?
Well, thank you for the question. This goes to show what we have been talking about all this time, that, we have a deranged person who is leading a country. And if you go by, the history of the ACDHRS, we knew from the beginning what they were going to turn out to be, because it was all based on this madness that most of these African soldiers who staged coup d'etats propagate. Yes, I have I know in the not too far distant future we'll be going back to Gambia, or any Gambian who was born there, or our children or offspring can go back there peacefully. And this is the reason why we came up with this organization, Democratic Union of Gambian Activists. It was in August of last year, or this year, he just woke up one morning and decided that he was going to kill all the death row inmates, in the country.
Okay.
And then he ended up killing 9 people, and that was what really sparked the birth of DUGA. Even after several years of attempting to really organize ourselves, in a very formidable unit of organization, we finally mustered enough courage and found young people, who were determined to really become proactive and activists to really reverse, like this madness that is, really about to sink our country, the bottomless pit. So, yes, I know it's not only me, but a lot of us are hopeful that very soon, that we'll be returning, because Jammeh has reached the end of his rope. And as we say, he either has to hang himself, or that, our mass organized effort, will really remove him out of our lives.
Thank you, Mr. Mbenga. The president Yahya Jammeh has been known as one of the most terrifying and brutal dictators in Africa. And for those people who will not agree with me, I will allow myself to read some of the things that he has done that earned him the title of a dictator. President Yahya Jammeh in 2000 ordered the killing of at least 14 students who were shot to death during a student demonstration. Apart from that, journalists have been killed, opponents have been killed. Amnesty International has denounced unlawful arrests, has denounced the use of torture against prisoners, and just recently, in October 2013, a young Gambian was killed, Mr. Kasim Kanye, beaten to death by the security forces for riding his bike when the roads were closed for the president's arrival. Last year, he executed Gambian prisoners, 9 Gambian prisoners by firing them because he just decided just one morning that these prisoners, could just join their ancestors. Amid the international protests against his rule, there hasn't seemed to be any progress in terms of human rights. And it seems like he doesn't really care about what others are saying about him. And he's determined to keep ruling Gambia that way. And in another statement, he even said that as long as Allah will allow it, he will be the president of the Gambia. So amid with this situation, I've seen I've read the stories of different dictators all over the continent, but President Jammeh is the one that I believe is the most how should I even phrase it? He seems like he has a lot of confidence. He knows what he's doing. He seems to be knowing what he's doing, and he's decided to continue in brutalizing the people, as he thinks he kind of like has some superior powers. So how can you fight such a dictator who really doesn't care about what the people are thinking, what the international institutions are saying, and what his neighborhood countries are also saying? So how do you fight a dictator who is so reckless? The question goes to you, Mr. Pasamba Jow.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, that is a very important question, and that is the dilemma in fighting with a tyrant. The history of dictatorship anywhere in the world shows that most dictators will always try to portray this mystification of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only way that they can survive is to, give people this impression that they have supernatural powers, that they are, the bravest people in the world, they can conquer anybody. Okay. But underneath it all, what we are dealing with is a cowardly tyrant. Because it is only a coward who would slaughter innocent kids, defenseless students, because he was afraid that these students would end his rule. So he had to resort to the most vicious type of brutality. He rules with brute force, not because he is brave, but because he is a coward. We've seen tyrants like Saddam Hussein, who had a bigger army, who slaughtered people and thought that he could not go. What happened? They found him in a hole. We saw Gaddafi, who was more powerful in Africa than Gaddafi. When he flies, he would fly with two different aircrafts. Nobody would know where he's based. He would have his big tent, with his security. Everybody was afraid of him. Where did they find him? Hiding in a hole. So this is always the end result of all tyrants. And let me say this. It is not easy to fight a tyrant. It's not.
I do.
Fighting in a struggle is not easy. That's why it is called a struggle, because it is a hard fight. But we believe and we are confident that Jammeh is not powerful. Jammeh is not brave. Jammeh is a coward. Let me just give you an example.
I see.
When Jammeh came to the UN, we went to New York, Gambian dissidents. This guy was scared and holed up in his hotel room because he was scared to come out of his hotel. We were not there with guns. We were not there with anything. We were there with just voices and placards. He had to smuggle his wife. The Secret Service smuggled his wife through the back door of a hotel kitchen, to be able to leave the hotel premises. So, in essence, what I'm saying here is Jammeh talks big too much. Because he tries to mystify himself. This is why wherever you see him, he's with his prayer beads and talking about Allah this, and Allah is holding a book that he calls the Quran to mystify himself, so that people will think that this is the guy, he is strong, he has powers. But what we have come to learn is that Jammeh is a coward and his days are numbered, because we are not relenting. We are going to continue to fight the fight in a very disciplined and organized way, and undoubtedly we will succeed, and we will succeed very soon.
Okay, interesting. Do you know, you mentioned President Gaddafi, who, a few years ago was kind of like one of the most powerful presidents of Africa, and just almost 2 years ago now, he has lost the war against the rebels in Libya. But what I'm tempted to say is that, in Africa, there are a school of thought of Africans, for example, who are very frustrated by the policies of the West toward Africa, and who believe that Western nations are imperialistic and should not be trusted, should not be supported whatsoever. And they see every single African president who gets quite along with the West as puppets. And as a result, since President Jammeh doesn't have a very good relationship with the West. These Africans believe that President Jammeh is a better president. And the reason why he has been behaving like this is because he is overprotective of his country. They think that his use of violence and force is a way of safeguarding his country and the religion he believes in order to avoid a Western occupation. So what do you have to say to these people? I will. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Pasamba Jow.
Yes, you see, that's the thing about Jammeh, because Jammeh, what Jammeh says in the open and what he does in behind the scenes are two different things. He would come and tell people, you know what, the British have been here for 400 years. Of course, the British have not been in the Gambia for 400 years. The time that they came there to the time that we gained our independence was 76 years, not 400 years. But if you look at what we call development in the Gambia, most of the developmental projects in the Gambia were financed by the European Union.
Wow.
Whether it is the rural electrification project, whether it is the road projects, whether it is the price stabilizer and interprofessional, agribusiness association, the funds, even the education projects that Jammeh talks about, we are funded by the EU. And this is why, when the EU came with 7 points things to discuss about the Gambia that Jammeh had to improve on, and they were talking about respecting the very constitution of the Gambia, he went on TV, berated them, and in fact organized a charade of a protest that Gambians were united with him because the EU did. Guess what happened? He went back very quickly and started negotiating again with the very same EU because he understood that his government could not survive without the help of those people, because the Gambian economy is in dire states. We do not produce anything, we do not export anything, we rely entirely on loans and grants from the EU and other institutions. So when Jammeh, this is why it is important for people to understand that what Jammeh says on TV is very different from what how Jammeh deals with the Western world. He would talk big, act like he is this strong guy who is Pan-Africanist and all these things. This guy is the guy who slaughtered 44 Ghanaians.
Yeah, he's
the guy who slaughtered
Ghanaians. Yes.
Yes. There was a Togolese who died from that.
That is true.
So this is the same guy who would, Jammeh is a habitual liar. He cannot be trusted.
Mr. President, before we keep going, we have a large Togolese and Ghanaian audience, and I believe they would like to know more about the conditions in which President Jammeh slaughtered 44 Ghanaians and a Togolese citizen who were migrants in the Gambia. Will you be able to elaborate a little bit on that for us, please?
Yes, of course. What they did was they mistook these trawlers, because the people who used to fish.
Yes.
They mistook those people for mercenaries who were trying to overthrow him. That just tells you how naive and paranoid this guy is.
Okay.
So what he did, instead of investigating the matter, they decided to go ahead and they rounded up these people.
Wow.
And slaughtered them. All of them. One of them managed to escape. And he was able to narrate or tell the story to the world. And recently, not too long ago, one of his junglers, because Jammeh has a group of soldiers who go and kill people on his orders. Like go and pick up Pasamba Jow and shoot him dead, and they would go and do that.
Okay.
That person was able to leave the country and went on one of the online radio station, Freedom newspaper, and explained the whole detail of how they were killed and how they were dumped, the bodies, into a well in Casamance, which is a region of Senegal.
Yes. Thank you for that elaboration, and we feel very bad for the killing of these Ghanaian and Togolese citizens. However, I would like to mention also one thing regarding the President Yahya Jammeh of the Gambia. It is the fact that he believes strongly that he doesn't need the West, And very recently, he has ordered, and he doesn't need anyone because it's not just the West, because just a few weeks ago, he has cut all ties with Taiwan. And according to the ambassador of Taiwan in China, the former ambassador, because China has closed an embassy in Banjul, but according to the former ambassador of Taiwan in the Gambia, Mr. Samuel Chen, the reason why President Jammeh decided to cut ties with Taiwan is because Taiwan refused to grant a $10 million aid requested by the Gambia, and that does not meet the requirements of Taiwan. According to the ambassador, the proposal doesn't state how the money was going to be used, and as a result, they have rejected it. And the President Jammeh, not being very happy about this, had decided to cut ties with Taiwan. But some analysts also believe that the reason why President Jammeh has cut ties with Taiwan is because it wants to rebuild its relationship with China. As China has been investing a lot and giving a lot of aid to African nations, he believes that he can get more from China than he has been getting from Taiwan. And he was exasperated by the fact that Taiwan refused to give him an aid of $10 million. What is your intake on that, Mr. Mbenga?
Oh, thank you, Farida. Before I take that, I just wanted to kind of concur, with what Pasamba was saying.
Mm-hmm.
But by saying that Jammeh is nothing but a neo-colonial petty bourgeois. So all this ranting is nothing but petty bourgeois, just typical petty bourgeois radicalism. They rant about neo-colonialism and that they are Pan-Africanists and that they love Africa. But if you love Africa, you cannot love Africa and hate African people.
Okay.
And then the slightest thing, the slightest disagreement that the Gambian people have with you is like heads will roll 6 feet deep. What in that kind of behavior? Who are you trying to organize? Who are you trying to defend? When you just slaughter people, at the drop of a hat. So this is typical of all these neo-colonial stooges. And if Jammeh is even worse than what the Europeans were doing, because you would think that coming from poverty and misery, that if when he comes into power, he will at least be you have empathy, be sympathetic. But this guy owns everything in the country. He wants to run a beggardom where everybody is a beggar. Everybody runs to him, and for favors or a job. And he is seriously, he is even worse than the Europeans, because here are the guys, who have taken us back, almost 50 years backwards. So
okay.
it's all this false notion of this pseudo Pan-Africanists, and in reality, really these are our problems. Jammeh and these other neo-colonial stooges are our problems.
Okay.
So when they run out of favor with with the same people that they go to bed with, and then they try to turn around and try to pose as like he's a revolutionary. Jammeh has never been a revolutionary.
I see.
And then to come to the recent this recent quagmire between Gambia and Taiwan. We had predicted this long time ago, because right now he knows that his days are numbered. So now what he is trying to do is he thinks he's slick, just like most other people did. When you fall out of favor from one camp, you flip to the other, to the other camp. So it's this flip-flop game that we had predicted that this wasn't going to last, because Taiwan doesn't care about what happens in Gambia or African countries. All they want to do is just to be recognized in the UN. So this. This saying that you don't have no permanent friends, in politics, is exactly what is being manifested right now. Jammeh knows that he's finished. So what he's trying to do right now, is to see how he can salvage any residue of his corrupt state, and he will do anything to find money from anybody. So this is where we as Africans, who are aware of what is happening in the world coming now, we have to really be very, astute and ready to expose this kind of relationships that these tyrants, have with, any country for that matter. And that, it's not going to benefit us because he owns everything in the country, whether it's land, everything, the television, the roads, he claims he owns the road. He owns everything in the Gambia. So what benefit does this guy have for Gambia or Africa? Nothing.
Okay. So we get your point, Mr. Pasamba Jow, but numerously you mentioned that his days are numbered, and your organization is one of these human rights diaspora organizations that have been fighting to end the regime of President Yahya Jammeh. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about what you have been doing for the past few months since you created the organization, and what have been your achievements so far?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot since we came. But before I just want to make one point about why Jammeh is running to China.
Okay.
Because we find it very coincidental, or trying to run to China, and information that we have is that China is not interested in taking Jammeh up, picking him up as a friend, because the relationship that they have with Taiwan now, they don't want to ruin that. That's one thing. Secondly, it is very interesting that this whole thing came on the heels of the EU refusing to give him $10 million out of $13 million that they were supposed to give the Gambia government. Because they were complaining about the human rights record. So he decided, okay, let me go to another soft spot. I've left the Commonwealth, and then maybe China would give me something. But coming to your question, since we came into being, like Mr. Mbenga had alluded to earlier, DUGA's coming about was as a result of the senseless, brutal execution of nine prisoners. We had formed this organization. From there, we had done a number of activist work. We have organized town hall meetings. We've exposed Jammeh's $3.5 million mansion here in Potomac and have picketed that mansion. We've organized a number of protests at the embassy and other places to expose, the tyranny that is in the Gambia. And we were very instrumental in the protest that I mentioned when we went to New York that kept Jammeh as a prisoner in his hotel for a whole day. And then one of our most prominent actions was when we took over the Gambian embassy on the 9th of October, which resulted in the arrest of three of our people, myself, Ousainou Mbenga, and Sohna Sallah. And then we had to spend the night in jail and all that. And then, of course, what we've been able to do is to put the government in the defensive. And this is why now the Gambia embassy, you will not invite them anywhere for them to go, because they are so scared that anywhere they go, people will hound them. So we've been able to do a lot in collaboration with our other partners in the struggle. Like we played a very important role in the meeting. We had a conference here in Raleigh, where almost activists around the globe and opposition leaders in the Gambia all came together to try to set a new way, a new path in the struggle. And this has given a result to the establishment of the Committee for the Restoration of Democracy in the Gambia. So we collaborate with our fellow comrades to ensure the freedom of the Gambian people. But DUGA has been doing a whole lot in trying to enlighten the people, in trying to protest, and we're going to continue to do that, to protest, to enlighten, and hopefully, eventually, we'll have what we're looking for in having a Gambia that is democratic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pasamba Jow. I will ask this, or I'll turn this question to Mr. Mbenga. You've done very well in demonstrating and explaining and detailing all the things you have accomplished since you created the organization. But as an activist myself, I know that, you know, there's always an opposition to you know, activists who stands for democracy, human rights, and stuff like that. So there must have been some Gambians in the diaspora as well who do not agree with you trying to overthrow the regime of President Jammeh. So can you please elaborate a little bit, you know, some of these difficulties you've been encountering in your activism, both coming from the Gambians who support the regime and also coming from the regime itself, because there are some people who are not in the regime but indirectly they support it and they do not agree with those who try to change anything. They kind of like feel comfortable with the way things are. So what have been the difficulties you've encountered towards your activism?
Yes, that's a very fair question, you know, because we also believe that that we never claim any easy victories. And if everybody had agreed with what we were doing, then, you know, we will really step back and question, you know, wait a minute, you know, there's something is not right here. Yes, there has been some opposition, especially, let's say, you know, when after we were arrested and then we were released, the support and this hope and diminishing the element of fear that had really paralyzed the Gambian community was just unimaginable. It was so fantastic. But we are not still we are still not under any illusions that some of the Jammeh forces are in opposition. But what happened, Farida, is that over time, this guy has, you know, there is no family in the country that Jammeh has not touched wrongly. Okay. So, let's say years back, the opposition was very obvious. You know, it was tremendous, you know, online, you know, or even... So,
you're saying that you have not had any opposition to your struggle coming from the Gambian people or Gambian diaspora members?
No, yeah, what I'm saying is, you know, it is, there is still some remnants of it, but because of what he has been doing, there is no family in that country that this guy has in touch. Okay. So what we're saying that, you know, there is still opposition, but it's eroding so rapidly that even after we were arrested and released, you know, there were very few pockets of resistance, you know, or disagreement with what we did. And, you know, we expect that. You know, it's still there. But what we are saying is that it is eroding because we have really rekindled confidence and, you know, made the Gambian people to understand that it is possible to win, to fight and win. Okay. You know? So over time, yeah, the opposition is still there, but it's eroding. And this is what we are saying, that, you know, we want to really kind of, you know, continue to give confidence to the community and make them understand that, you know, we are the only ones who can solve our problem. Nobody is going to come from outside and do it for us. Okay. So these are the processes that we are engaging the community in, and and we are under no illusion that nobody that his supporters or people who are in opposition, you know, are finished, you know, or that they are gone. We know some of them are still around, but they have seen that Jammeh has, you know, either directly did it to them or to a family member, a brother or sister, or mother, or even an entire family. So right now, most of them are very, you know, apprehensive of their support for Jammeh. So it's like lukewarm, and sometimes some of them, you know, like hide behind these pseudonyms, you know, or behind their keyboards, and, you know, haul insults or some, you know, unfounded criticisms at us. But, you know, what we are trying to do is to see how we can also even win these forces, these people who are still supporting Jammeh, and open their eyes, or those who used to support them, because we have along the way gained a lot of, made a lot of change of heart from people who used to support him. And then now they're not supporting DUGA per se, but, you know, they give it's a nod and a wink that, you know, yeah, this is the right way for us to really, you know, get this tyrant, you know, or fling him off our backs. Okay. So we are under no illusion that there's no opposition. You know, without it, you know, like I don't think we would have grown this, you know, as we have grown. But yes, we even try to win these people who are been Jammeh and enablers on our side, because lately, we have developed, a slogan that anything minus from Jammeh is a plus for us.
Anything minus?
Anything minus, anybody minus from the Jammeh camp and comes over onto our side, it's a plus for us, and one minus for him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbenga. We have a listener who just joined us who would like to ask you a question. Mr. Dennis just joined us. Hi, Mr. Dennis, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you very much, Farida, for picking up my call.
Thank you for calling us.
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much and your panelists for a good work that you rendering to Mother Africa.
Thank you.
My questions to your panelists. Yes, last week I was listening to you and I thought you said you would be talking about Djibouti, but I think you changed it and today is for Gambia.
Actually, I'm sorry about that. Yes, the fact is that I have two versions of the show. I have an English version and a French version, and we did the Djibouti show during the French version on Sunday, and I believe I got you a little bit confused. Since Djibouti is a French-speaking country, the show was conducted in French last Sunday. So today we are talking about Gambia.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the explanation. Now, my question with your panelists is, I think the problems with Africa is our politicians they haven't been sincere to us. That is why we're having problems. And I think last week when we were tweeting about Eritrea, you talk about the current president, who was also an activist. There was a problem in that country and he formed this organization. But sadly enough, when he had the chance to rule, nothing has changed. And my questions to the panelists, the Gambian panelists, is what difference would they bring to the Gambians? Because we almost always, the very thing that they complain about are the very thing when they get a chance to rule. That is the very thing. At times they do it even worse. They've been able to explain the bad things that Jammeh is doing, but they haven't been able to tell us a single thing what they would do differently from what Jammeh is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. We appreciate your question. Mr. Mbenga and Mr. Pasamba Jow, who of you want to answer this question?
I'll take the question. I just want to say something like DUGA is not trying to overthrow the government. We will want to have a change of government through democratic means. Now, that said, that is a very legitimate question, Dennis, and we thank you very much for asking it. First of all, for clarification, DUGA is not a political party and is not aspiring to rule or run that country. What we are is a group of Gambian activists who are concerned with the situation and the direction in which our country is going, and we want to change it. And we are our preoccupation is not only Jammeh. What DUGA is interested in entirely is to have a Gambia that is free of tyranny in all its form, in particular an Africa that is free of tyranny. It is true that African politicians, not only African politicians, but most politicians do not tell people the truth. But the problem with that is, especially in Africa, we do not hold our leaders accountable. Because what we have is we have people who sit right on the top, at the top, and we sit at the bottom and allow them to do whatever it is that they have to do. The first thing that Africans must reject is this blame game. You know, we've been independent for over 50 years. We cannot continue to blame the same people who colonized us for our situations today. Because it is not the British who are killing the Gambians, it is Yahya Jammeh who is killing the Gambians. It is not the British who are pillaging the resources of the Gambia, it is Yahya Jammeh who is pillaging the resources of the Gambia. What DUGA believes in is that we have to have a clear democratic system. And this is what we exercise in our organization. Everything must be done in a democratic way. People will have a voice. People will debate issues. People will vote for issues, and nobody is supposed to be brought down because of your status is not that. That is why we try to have a collective leadership where everybody participates. But the question he asked is very legitimate. It is only that we have no desire to go and run that country. Maybe individual people may have the desire, but DUGA as a group does not have a desire to rule the country. What we want to see is a democratic country. We are an activist group wanting to see a Gambia that is democratic and to hold any leader that comes, whether it is from within us or outside, accountable to the people, so that at least we will not have a repeat of the situation that we've had for 19 years.
Okay. Before we continue, please, I would like to inform our listeners that the lines are open, as you can notice it. Since we started quite late today, we are not able to go on a break, on a musical break. But the lines are open, and you can join us on 240-813-4996, 240-813-4996. Dear listeners, we are back. We hope you are enjoying the show, and I'm very sorry about the technical issue we had. We are back with our guest, Mr. Pasamba Jow, who is the spokesperson of DUGA, and Mr. Ousainou Mbenga, who is the chairman of DUGA, Democratic Union of Gambian Activists. We are discussing the politics of the Gambia, mainly the regime of President Jammeh of the Gambia, who has been ruling the country since 1994 when he took power after a military coup at age 29. Today, President Jammeh is 48 years old. He has been in power for almost 20 years, and he has been known as one of the worst dictators in Africa for his very tyrannical ways of ruling the country. So we will continue, and we will cover a more interesting aspect of President Jammeh that we were discussing earlier on. President Jammeh believes that, he's the only president in Africa who believes that he can cure AIDS and asthma. And, without trying to be funny, I think this is good news for me, because I'm sorry to say that I have asthma. And for the past years, unfortunately, my parents haven't been able to find any cure for me. So hopefully when I get a chance, I would really love to go to the Gambia and be cured by His Excellency President at-large Dr. Professor Jammeh. But unfortunately, as a human rights activist, I'm not wanted in the country because he guaranteed that he will kill me. So, I'd rather live with my asthma for now than die of trying to cure it by going to the Gambia. But please, the president of the Gambia has been known as, one of the most interesting ones. Also, in 2009, he kind of was affiliated to the killing of several Gambian citizens in what he calls a fight against witchcraft. He believes that these people were witches. And in order to cure Gambia from witches, he decided to kill all these citizens. So please, can you please tell us about how you, the Gambians, react towards these decisions and this statement that your president made? Because in 2007, he said this: just as the Prophet Muhammad prevailed and established Islam, I also prevailed to cure HIV/AIDS. So we have an HIV/AIDS doctor in the Gambia who has no, medical degree. And we also have a witchcraft fighter in the Gambia, and I don't know where he was able to learn how to fight witchcraft. But please, how do you Gambians react to this in your community?
Well, it's very funny. This is Pasamba. And I'll just give you figures, the AIDS one. When Jammeh declared in 2007 that he could cure AIDS,
yes,
the records of AIDS patients in Gambia was 6,800 people.
Okay.
In 2012, the number of Gambians who have AIDS is over 18,000.
Wow.
And before that, because in 2001, we had about 13,000 cases. And those had gone down to 6,800 by 2007.
Wow.
Then this crazy guy, who calls himself everything in the book, decided that he was starting to cure AIDS, the number had almost tripled. And like this idea that he was curing people of witches, bringing people from Guinea, giving people concoction, people died from it. Some people have not even gone back to their villages, because we are all Africans. And there is nothing more embarrassing to have this stigma on you, where you are paraded before people and accused of being a witch. So most people died from it because of the concoction that he gave them, had very dire results, and people lost their lives from it. But again, this shows you the dangerousness of this guy that we have as president, because he has a clinic. He cures everything in the book. He cures AIDS, he cures asthma, he cures high blood pressure, he cures impotency, he cures even, like, he has a day where he cures people who cannot have kids.
But
he will have women who are half naked.
I have a question. Does he also cure dictatorship? Because that's the cure I'm interested in for himself.
I hope he can cure that. Well, he acknowledges openly that he's a dictator, but a dictator for development.
But I'm sure he cures democracy and human rights, because he doesn't seem to like that quite well.
No, he doesn't. But the thing is that just shows you the seriousness of the Gambian situation, because other dictators, they only stopped at harassing people and denying them their rights. But this guy has been killing people. But in Africa, you call yourself a leader. He goes there with his beak down and brought, he will bring people who will stage this whole thing, say that they have, evil things, again, evil spell or whatever, and he would, have them half naked, especially women, would be rubbing things on all over their body, touching them in the most, violent way. Private ways or whatever, it's so you cannot even imagine, and this is all on TV. He has it and would be uttering all this nonsense that he utters. People lined up there, and he is talking about, okay, now I have 60 batches of cured AIDS victims, and they will come, they will be paraded on TV, and they say, now you guys are free. You have no AIDS, and of course, what would happen? You go back and have protected relationship with somebody, and it starts growing all over the place. This guy cannot cure anything. And the sad thing is his wife. For the wife to have kids, they have 2 kids. The wife would have to be flown to Washington, D.C. to have kids. The mom comes to Washington, D.C. to get cured for high blood pressure, the same thing that Jammeh says he's curing back home. So when his family is sick, they come to the United States for treatment, but he is treating Gambians of the same diseases that he is sending his mom all the way to if I can cure, I will not send my mom anyway. I'll cure my mom. Why send my mom to Washington, D.C. if I know how to cure? So this is the sad thing.
The cure doesn't work on his family members. It only works on other people. Meanwhile, we have an auditor online, and we will take him now. Hi, sir. I would like to know who is online, because I don't have the name is not showing up. So, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're living.
It's good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to join this conversation. Let me say I've only recently taken key interest in, what's going on in other African countries, and I would like to thank you, Farida, and Steering Radio for this fantastic opportunity. Now, in the interest of transparency, I'd like to identify myself as a Ghanaian, and I am very saddened on hearing about some of our citizens and the Togolese citizens who were caught in the crossfires and brutality of Yahya Jammeh. I had no idea that we had such a tyrant in West Africa. I have to admit of my ignorance. But that said, I'd like to find out from your panelists if they could tell us some of the successes, if any, that they've been able to chalk so far. And also if they can tell us if they've been able to bring Yahya Jammeh's tyrannical rule to the attention of the international community, and also if they've been able to at least register some of their complaints to the Hague, because it looks like he's doing quite some damage to the people, and not only his people, but other African brothers as well. So I'd like to hear, what they have to say in response, and what the relationship is with Senegal, since they are neighbors. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I will go up and listen to the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can we please have your name, if possible?
My name is Atu.
Akim?
Atu, A-T-O.
Oh, Acho, thank you for calling us. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
You have
Bye
a
now.
good evening. Bye-bye.
Boss, do you want to take that, or you want me to go?
Yes, I can. You can chime in later on. I think. Well, first of all, my brother, we were really saddened by that incident. Knowing how, especially Ghanaians, have been traveling from Ghana along the west coast to Gambia for years before Jammeh even came into this scene. And on that eventful day, these, numbskull soldiers could have investigated, because there was not even a knife on that boat. So I don't know what Jammeh, what information was given to him to have just slaughtered, all those Africans, on that, cold-bloodedly. And there was no weapon, on that boat. They know it too, because the guys who participated in that, came out and disclosed it. But anyway, there was a lot of corrupt practices, following that, following that, during Mills', presidency, and Jammeh maneuvered his way, and they just quelled, the incident. But it's still in our memory. But early on, brother, we had discussed. My comrade Pasamba had talked about the things that we had done. We basically had organized, a lot of protests, and town hall meetings, and we just briefly we had occupied the embassy, and that led to our arrest, and then we spent a night in jail and came back out. But the issue here, my brother, is that we are also more interested in letting African people know our plight, like Ghana, Senegal, particularly in Senegal, because there is a saying, like in one of that, what wakes up in Senegal spends the night in Gambia, and vice versa. So neighbors are very, very important. So this is one of our quests. We want African people to know the plight of what we are going through, under this Jammeh regime. And before, matter of fact, anybody else knows, because if Africans internalize this problem that we are having, and sometimes, I know that there are other places that have gone through these similar, episodes that we are going through right now. So we want to sensitize, first the Gambian people to understand what we are confronted with and what the solutions, to this problem is. And of course, our relationship with Senegal, the Senegalese people, I should say, because we need to distinguish between the government and the people at this point, because there has been a lot of problems. There had been 3 disappearances of 3 Gambian nationals, and we still don't know where they are, whether they are alive, or whether they're dead. And we think that both the Senegal and the Jammeh regime know something about it. So, but still, we are not just going to dismiss the Senegalese government that we can't do anything with them, because we are still determined that to penetrate somehow and have some real neighborly relationship with the Senegalese government. But the Senegalese people, like we are tied together, in destiny, whether we understand it or not, or whether we want to, or whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Because the only thing that separates us, is these stupid borders, which when you go there, you see how the ordinary people just go in and out, and without any fanfare, unless the government, intervene, in this process. So the Senegalese people and the Gambian people are one, and we are always going to remain one. So with DUGA, is here to cultivate this thing to a much more principled level, where what happens in Senegal, is our concern, and what happens in the Gambia is the concern of the Senegalese people. So basically, this is where we are, and I think it's a very it's a very important issue here for African people to understand. that what is happening in the Gambia should not only be a Gambian issue, it should be an African issue. You know, we always try to let people understand that, you know, even as far as Congo, you know, when something happens in the Congo, we should all be concerned. So, I mean, I think we have been dealing with the EU and other so-called European organizations. But me, I think fundamentally, you know, we, the victims of this Jammeh tyranny, should be the ones who first internalize this thing, you know, and stand with our backs erect, so that nobody, you know, he will never climb our backs again. And that's where we are at this point, you know, with our organization. And we're hoping that like Farida has opened the floodgates, you know, and you know all Africans will be aware of what is happening in the Gambia, so we can isolate this guy and take Gambia back, you know, in our own hands.
Yes, I just wanted to just interject here too, because of one part of the question was what are we doing in talking to the international community. We engage, we are in, like, not DUGA directly, but our partners. We work in with our partners, and we've had meetings with the EU, and at The Hague we've been there a number of times. But you know, The Hague is a politics of its own. So you know, and it is so interesting. Like the ICC, the chief prosecutor there happens to be a Gambian. Guess who championed her candidature? It was Jammeh. But we've been in contact with all these people, the U.S. State Department, so the Commonwealth, so almost every institution. And we've also worked very closely with Amnesty International and other human rights groups. So every international organization we've been in contact with, and we're going to intensify it because it is important for people like Jammeh to be isolated. And it was through these contacts that the EU decided to hold 10 million out of 13 million that they were supposed to give the Gambia government, on the condition that the government would have to improve its human rights record, absent which they were not going to deal with it, you know, especially developmental aid.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pasamba Jow, for that addition. We have a new listener who just joined us. It is Mr. Kofi Wadier. And hi, Mr. Kofi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling today.
And thank you so much.
You're very
for
welcome.
Picking up my call.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. So do you have a question for our panelists?
Yes. And I'll first thank you all for the depth of light that you are throwing into Yahya Jammeh's administration and the attendant atrocities that you are unraveling for all of us here. But the question I have for the panelists is, most often we see that these dictators, they actually hang on for quite so long that we wonder, because mostly the focus is always on the dictators. We talk about what they are doing, we talk about the atrocities, we talk about their inhumane treatment to their own people, their own countrymen and women. But my question is, in Ghana, I'm from Ghana, one of the tribes, there is a proverb that says that when you are a farmer, you go to farm and you are clearing the bushes, the weeds, and the forest, the shrubs. And you know, those of us who are familiar with farming, when you cut them with the cutlass and you try to pull them, you know, you pull the shrubs aside and then you move forward. They say sometimes you try to pull it, you cut one of them or two of them, you try to pull it aside and then move forward to clear the next one, and you realize that when you're pulling it, it doesn't come out, it doesn't move. Then definitely there is something holding it. There is something, there is another stronger shrub or rope in any form holding it back that you can't pull it. And I hope you're getting it. You're getting the scenario that I'm trying to throw out here.
Yes.
Right. So these dictators, what is actually holding them that the masses everybody complaining about the atrocities, the inhumane treatment of their own people, what actually is always holding them that we are unable to neutralize that power in order to free the people. So when we look at those, angles and looking at it from this perspective, then we'll be making a move towards finding and identifying the problems and then the solution to getting these people out of power. So the question I'm posing here to summarize everything is, what do you think that they are doing that is so pervasive and powerful that we, the masses, knowing what they are doing, we are almost unable to neutralize that power and get them out of power?
Thank you, Mr. Coffey, for your question and your opinion and remarks. That is quite a tough one. Thank you very much for being with us. We hope you will be calling us more often.
Sure.
Okay. So, Mr. Mbenga and Mr. Jow, the mic is...
Yeah. I mean, like, the brother, is so full of wisdom, in that. Because, African proverbs are so deep, just like he's saying, So, my view, the reason why this show up here, this Jammeh dictatorship, has lingered on for 19 years, going on to 20 years, it's primarily one, this unfounded fear and this mystification of this guy, thinking that, he has all these magical powers and that he, like you were saying earlier, alluding to, and, I really like the humor too. Never mind how tough things are, we should never lose our sense of humor. I think Jammeh prevailed for 19 years because of one, fear, and two, impoverishment of the people. It's not only in the Gambia, because what happens is that when these two mingle or knot up, fear and impoverishment, they yield a very docile and short memory population. And this guy wanting to stay in power, obviously he has to wield this thing, or else to stay there long enough. So he added this tyranny, where he can come and terrorize people, and the language that he even uses. And you can go and compare it with other tyrants, in Africa and elsewhere. Heads will roll 6 feet deep. That's the language that Jammeh has always spoken since 1994. So, and in the absence of any serious organization, any organization that wants to bring about revolutionary change, this thing becomes deeply entrenched because he intimidates everybody by this violence and summary executions, and all these atrocities that we have endured, under him since 1994. So a combination of all these things, I believe at one point, like really weighs down on the general population to such a degree that this guy thinks that he just will have his way forever. But once organization comes in the equation, I think, like the whole equation will change. And this is what we are realizing right now, with our efforts, our actions, even though across the waters, but it has really reverberated, in the souls and hearts of Gambians. And I believe that, we have, touched, this deep-seated, hidden fear that this guy, is invincible and things like that. We made him, we touched him. And we proved to people that he is touchable just like he can touch anybody else. And I think, what we did in New York and in the embassy, has really, really made an impact. And Jammeh realizes that that we can fight him and win. And that's why he's, resorting to all these desperate acts with Taiwan, and the EU coming out of the Commonwealth and all these things. These are all just, in desperate acts. And once we realize that, it is organization and unity that is going to really uproot, this tyranny, in our lives, then, we will begin to understand that we are not going to repeat this mistake of the past, where, anybody in our midst can rise up again, and be like Jammeh. And that's what we're trying to really impart into the minds and hearts of the Gambian people. And for that matter, we should do it all over Africa, and that no single person will ever come in, and terrorize us like this, and just think that you own the country, that you can do whatever you want to do.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pasamba Jow. So unfortunately, we have run out of time. We actually went over time. Hopefully, we will have a chance to go through this once again, because there is so much more that we need to cover. But unfortunately, the time betrayed us. And I would like to thank you so much for coming. Thank our auditors for also calling in and ask their questions. Mr. Acho, Mr. Kofi, Mr. Dennis, thank to all of them. However, I will give you a very, few minutes, for you guys to conclude. So I will start with you, Mr. Mbenga.
Yes, Farida, again, I thank you very, very much, because, like I said, this is the initial stage. You have opened up the floodgate, and I hope that, we can engage in this process of discovering each other and making our concerns, and our pain and our anguish, anguish. Whatever happens in Togo, affects me. Whatever happens in the Gambia affects somebody in Togo, Congo, Sierra Leone, Ghana, everywhere, even here in the U.S. So I think, I'm very happy that, we are beginning this process, and let's continue.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I really appreciate Mr. Mbenga. It was my pleasure having you on air today. So, Mr. Pasamba Jow, as the spokesperson of DUGA, what do you have to say on your behalf and that of your organization?
Well, first to thank you so very much again for giving us this opportunity for, like Ousainou put it, for us discovering each other. And hopefully this will be the beginning of a new partnership where we can collaborate to fight for the greater good of all Africa. To the listeners, the Democratic Union of Gambian Activists is a democratic organization whose goal and activism is all democratic, and our goal is to ensure a democratic Gambia one and eventually a whole and total liberation of the African continent from the tyrants. This Saturday, this coming Saturday, which will be the 30th of November, DUGA will be holding a town hall meeting. It will be in Silver Spring, Maryland, opposite the Holy Cross Hospital, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And you are welcome to attend if you are around town. And then we'll have Imam Babali. Imam Babali is a human rights. We call him the human rights Imam. He is one of the first winners of the Human Rights Defenders Award. He was in jail for over 5 months. We'll have Dr. Amadou Jammeh, who is a former minister of the regime, was released through the intervention of Jesse Jackson. He was incarcerated, sentenced to life in jail because he wore t-shirts or printed t-shirts that said end to dictatorship. Bankamane, who is one of the leaders of the struggle, and Fatou Camara, who is a TV personality and was recently in jail for 5 months, for 25 days for no reason, and was lucky to have escaped the Gambia to come to the United States. So it will be a dialogue, and we'll hope that everybody will make it. I'll email you the flyer, and hopefully your listeners would come. But we want to thank you and thank the listeners, and hopefully we'll do it again. Thank you.
I will share this information, and it is a pleasure for me to host you. And I believe in a strong, united Africa. I believe that we should all stand each other against any type of oppression, domination, and exploitation. And countdown, it is the countdown towards a free, open, democratic Africa that respects the rights of its people, and an Africa that stands on the strong values of democracy, freedom, and liberty. Thank you very much, Mr. Mbenga and Mr. Pasamba Jow, for being here today. I hope that we'll have a chance again to discuss the politics of the Gambia and also talk about the future outcomes of the of your struggle, and hopefully Biden, His Excellency Sheikh Professor Alhaji Dr. Yahya Abdulaziz Jamus Jukum Jammeh Nasiruddin of the Gambia will no longer have the ability to oppress his people as he has been doing for the past 20 years. Thank you so much again for being with us today. I hope you enjoy your evening and have a very great Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving to every auditor as well. So, goodbye.
Thank you, Farida.
Thank you. Goodbye.
You're very welcome. So, dear auditors and listeners, thank you very much for being with us today. I wish you a wonderful and beautiful Thanksgiving. Next week on Wednesday, we will be discussing the politics of Tunisia. Back in 2011, Tunisia blew the whole continent with the Arab Spring. We want to know more about the democratization of Tunisia, and we will be having Dr. Radwan Masmoudi, who is a democracy activist based in the US and a scholar, a Tunisian scholar, who will tell us more about the struggle that the Tunisians have been going through in order to implement democracy in their country.